Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Chromatic Knits podcast. My name is Michelle, and this is my place on the internet where I talk about all of my yarny adventures. You can find me on Instagram as chromatic_knits, and you can find me on Ravelry as chromatic knits. I'm so glad to be back. Welcome, if you're new. Welcome back if you're returning. I'm so glad that you're here. And let's talk about some knitting. Let's talk about some tools and some other things that we have going on in some recent events. So feel free to grab your own knitting, your laundry, your lunch, whatever it is that you're working on. Maybe just a nice cup of tea, or in my case, a Diet Dr. Pepper. um, and let's get into it. So, first of all, hello. It's been a minute. I'm so glad to be back. Um, and I have done a little bit of knitting. So, I've taken a little bit of a break from the MCAL because some people that I've been knitting with were a little bit further behind me. So, I'm just kind of waiting for them to catch up a little bit. But I think they have now, which is good. So, I can get back to that. But in the meantime, I've been working on my habitation throw. So this is a pattern by Helen Stewart. I'm almost to the end. It's getting huge. And I only have that many stitches left. So I'll just keep decreasing until I get down to just a couple stitches and then I will bind off. So I'm very excited about that. So this will be done hopefully by the end of this week. And then that will be one more Christmas gift completed. So very much looking forward to that. I'm loving this yarn. For those of you who don't remember, this was a kit by Molly of the Homespun House for this specific pattern. It was a set of minis, and I'm loving it. It's so soft. If you've never knit with Molly's a soft sock base, definitely go check it out. It is amazing how soft it is. It's from a mill in Germany somewhere, and it is lovely. Probably my favorite base. So always love knitting on this because I get to knit with my favorite yarn. So that'll be hopefully done soon. Fingers crossed this week. Um, and then that is all I've been knitting on other than the MCAL, which again I'm not going to show because I'm doing the original pattern of the Geo Gradient, and because I had already had it done by the time he had announced that he wanted to change it, and knowing me, I will, if I rip it out, I'm not going to finish it. So I've decided to continue, and I'm not going to show it because Stephen West has asked that we don't. So I'm going to respect that and not show it on the podcast. But it is coming along. I'm into Clue 2, which is nice. Um, but yeah, so that is all I've been working on as far as knitting goes, because I'm trying to get this blanket done so that I can focus on the other blanket for my other niece and get that done, and then we can move on. Because there's just a lot of knitting left to do on that blanket too. So that is that. Um, and then today, what I'd like to talk about, so some other things that are going on in the knitting world. Wool and Folk and Rhinebeck have happened this weekend. I know a lot of yarn dyers who were at Wool and Folk were very disappointed that it wasn't handled very well. As one of them said on their Facebook post, it was a shit show. So between the mud and the just amount of people that were there, just the overcrowding and the fact that it wasn't handicap accessible, apparently it was a mess. So some of those vendors have been posting on social media saying that, they're very sorry that Wool and Folk wasn't everything that, it was supposed to be. Um, and I think people had to pay like $50 to get in and then have that bad experience. But some people saying, they left after 15, 30 minutes because they just couldn't like didn't want to deal with it. And it was just such a mess. So they just left. That's very disappointing. And I know that it really hurt some of those businesses that had signed up to vend at Wool and Folk. So please, please, please check social media and look for those businesses. Some of them said that they will be putting what they didn't sell at Wool and Folk on their website. So then you can check that out there, because some of the vendors they vend at Wool and Folk, but didn't vend at Rhinebeck. So they ended up having a ton of inventory left over. And it really hurt them in the long run to vend there. So please check that out. Please support them where you can. I know like Dragon Horde Yarn was one of them. There are a few others that I've seen that I've posted on Instagram. But please check those out and keep your eye out for those to see how we can best support those vendors during this time. So, because I know that they, are really the ones that end up getting hurt in the long run. And as well as the people who spent all that money and then they didn't actually get to participate or enjoy it at all. So it's rough. It's a rough day. Um, but I hope that, everyone came out okay and that there wasn't, anything else negative that happened that day. Okay, so on to other things. What I'd like to talk about this episode is knitting tools. So today I'm going to go through my top 10 knitting tools. Some of these I've talked about before, some of them um, are things that you probably use or that you must use if you're knitting, some of them. Um, and I'm going to go through why they're important, why I use certain ones, and um, why I think that they are on my top 10 of all the tools that are available. So, number one, knitting needles. Obviously, you need knitting needles in order to knit. I use different needles for different things. I've explained all of this in a video all about knitting needles. You can check that out by looking down on my channel. I'm not going to go through that here, but knitting needles, my go to, Chow Goose. But I do use High Sharps for lace and different things like that. So, there are plenty of other brands that are great out there, but those are my personal favorites. Next, um, a Swift. I'll put a little video in here of my Swift in action. So I have an Amish Swift. There are two different types of Swifts. There's an umbrella Swift and there's an Amish Swift. I use an Amish Swift. I personally um, like the Amish Swift because it breaks down and I don't have to keep it up all the time. It also seems to be a little bit smoother to me than an umbrella Swift, and it doesn't have as many parts that can break on it as an umbrella Swift because it's all made out of wood. It's that you don't have plastic or metal parts that you have to worry about or worry about getting your yarn like trapped in it. The one that I have is I have a Stanwood umbrella or Amish Swift, a Stanwood Amish Swift. It's my favorite, and I really prefer it over the umbrella Swift, but that's just my personal opinion. Some people have a preference between the two, but essentially they do the same job. Third favorite tool is my ball winder. So I also have a Stanwood ball winder. I really, really like it because it has a massive cone on it, which allows you to ball up to 500-gram balls of yarn. So if you want to make like a massive cake or a magic cake, you can do that, and you don't have to worry about having to, snap your yarn and make a new one and make, 5 different cakes instead of one giant cake. So I really do like that about it. It works really, really well. I've never had any problems with it. Would highly recommend. To the point that when I moved here, I could not find my ball winder for my life. And it was right in front of my nose, obviously. But to the point that I bought a second one to replace it, and then I found the first one like almost immediately. So so now I have two, but I'm going to keep the second one just in case the first one dies eventually or breaks. And then that way I have my backup, but would highly recommend the Stanwood ball winder for sure. My fourth is stitch markers. We all use stitch markers, whether you use a loop of yarn that you've just placed or you use rings, or there's all different kinds that you can get. Stitch markers are super important for knowing like beginning of round, knowing where you are in a pattern. They help kind of guide you as you go around. So it's super, super important to have stitch markers available. And the next one is progress keepers. Progress keepers are super important for people like me who, especially when you work on a project like this one, being able to look at my progress keeper and knowing that let's find it. I was there the last time I showed this, and now I am there. Being able to see that distance, that length is huge. It helps you keep going, it helps you keep track of where you were, and it helps keep you helps keep me personally motivated, because I know like sometimes when I'm working on something like a sweater where you're just knitting in the round forever, or you're working on something like this where you're just knitting and knitting and knitting and decreasing and knitting, it feels like you're not making any progress. And then you look at where your progress keeper is and you go, oh, okay, well, I've actually knit 3 inches or whatever it is. Um, so it really helps keep me motivated and helps keep my mind like thinking positively about a project instead of just feeling kind of bored or defeated by a project. Um, Especially a larger project like a blanket or a sweater or a garment of some kind. It's definitely essential to make you, to encourage yourself and allow you to feel like, you have made some progress. So, progress keepers are huge for people like me, at least, who feel that way and who sometimes get kind of those negative feelings. Let's see. Darning needle. This is essential too. Sorry if you hear the garage door going on. Darning needles are essential for sewing in all of your ends, and keeping everything straight. You can also use a darning needle to help you pick up stitches. That's what I do. Some people use a crochet hook. I use a darning needle, just because it's a smaller needle that I can control better, and I'm not as good with a crochet hook because I don't crochet. Um, but it's a really handy tool. This is the Della Q one, which I really like. I got this from Jimmy Bean's Wool in a kit that I got from them. I did one of their clubs and it came with that, so would highly recommend. Let's see, knit sweater cords. So these I got from Yarn Candy, which is located in um, uh, it's located near Little Rock, Arkansas, but you can find all different brands. I know the Grocery Girls have their own brand now. Tons of people have them. Basically, it's a cord like this. It's just a plastic or vinyl cord that goes through your stitches and allows you to essentially extend, and you get two in a pack usually. And basically what this allows you to do is allows you to put your stitches on these cords to extend your cords out so that you can try on your sweater, which is really important for people like me who haven't knit very many garments and definitely want to try it on as you go. Or if you're making a garment for somebody else and this is the first time you've made a garment for them, or it's a different type of garment, something like that, and you want to check it out, that's definitely important. Um, the next tool that I have is the Knit Companion app. It's not a physical tool, but I still consider it a tool. It's a super handy app that allows you to look at all of your patterns and keep track of where you are. It allows you to highlight what line you're on in a pattern, which is especially important for people like me who don't remember where I am in the pattern, or it allows you to do it on charts too, so that it can help you keep track of where you are in the chart, which is super important, so that you're not kind of like your eyes not floating around. Sorry again about the garage door. And then the next one is project bags. Project bags are super important so that all of your stuff is together in one place and you're not losing anything. You're not losing your stitch markers or your yarn or anything like that. It also helps protect your project so that your yarn isn't going to end up getting all over the place. Or in my case, where my dog isn't going to stick her head in it and steal it and strew it all over the place, because Aria loves to yarn shop just like her mama. So, um, yeah, super important. And the last tool that I have are um, knitting blockers. So these are basically, they have little pins in them. And basically, what you do is when you're done knitting something, you wash it and then you block it. So you stretch it out to the size or the shape that you want it to be in, which is especially important for things like shawls, sweaters, things like that. And then you pin your yarn, your sweater, your yarn, your object down in the shape that you want it to be in, you want it to dry in. So these are super important. Again, I got these from Jimmy Bean's Wool. There are a bunch of different brands of these. If you just look up knit blockers, they'll show up. But you can find them on Amazon. Um, those are all my top 10 favorite tools. Are there any tools that you use that you love that you want to share down below? because I'd love to hear about it. Um, if you have any suggestions of tools or brands of tools that you prefer over my preferences, let me know down below. I always love hearing from you guys. And um, for anyone who stuck around, last time I did say that I was going to have a big announcement. And the big announcement is that I am going to be opening a test knit here in the next week. If you are at all interested in test knitting my piano mittens, please let me know. I am definitely looking for test knitters. So if you're interested in test knitting, you will get the pattern for free, obviously. And then as a um, thank you to all any test knitters, I will also be providing with a free pattern of your choice from Ravelry. So please let me know if you're interested down in the comments, or you can message me on Instagram. Again, my name there is chromatic_knits. And I will also be putting a test knit call out on Instagram as well, as some other places. So please have a look for that. And that is all I have for this week. Again, so glad to be back and love talking to you guys every week. And I will talk to you next week. Have a great week, everyone. Happy knitting.